Welcome to our town's hospital, Dr. Ferris. I hope you find this place agreeable.
Well, considering that your town has only a few thousand people, I am impressed at how modern and sophisticated the hospital's facilities are. I'm glad I came here. Oh, and you may call me Martha.
Thanks, but I have always been addressed around here as Dr. Drake, because I like to keep things professional. But my own first name is Michael. In fact, my middle name is DeBakey. Yes, I was actually named after the man that was your idol. My mother was a nurse, and she inspired me to become a doctor.
Interesting. Do you perform any surgeries?
Normally, no. I did have to perform an emergency C-section several years ago, but for the most part when I'm a general practitioner. I perform basic examinations, and if necessary refer a patient to a specialist if I discover a serious illness such as a heart condition. Here is where you would be doing surgeries. You are welcome to inspect the equipment before you use anything.
Thank you. I can see why Damien admires you. So how long have you been at this hospital?
About 25 years. You may join me at the cafeteria for lunch.
One of the things I disliked about the hospital I was at before was the management of it keeping Fox News on the TV in its cafeteria.
Isn't it good to be kept informed about national and world events?
Yes, but Fox News is known for being a propaganda mill rather than a legitimate news source.
Good evening, and welcome to the Rouge Scumba Show. Today, I learned the reason Mayor Wayne Bentley is willing to sell himself out instead of being loyal to the Republican Party. He is actually a relative of Sandy Smith. His niece Penny is married to James, the son of Mrs. Smith. Those who associate with the enemy are the enemy. Mr. Bentley must be removed as mayor of his town. We need someone loyal in that office. Oh my God, so he wants me out as mayor because of who my relatives are? He must be insane. That's the kind of divisive rhetoric that starts civil wars.
Well, Uncle Wayne, perhaps you could give him what he wants.
What do you mean?
The only reason you ever became mayor was because Mrs. Smith resigned from the office last year. But if she had not done that, don't you think she would have been re-elected? I mean, she did an awesome job.
That's true. I wonder. Sandy, I've been a Republican all my life. My father and grandfather were Republicans before me, but I just don't feel like the party I and my family believed in exists anymore. You got media personalities like Rouge Scumba attacking me, along with various party bosses. I was elected mayor to serve the citizens of this town, not serve the agenda of party bosses. Now that I know what it feels like to be hated for being true to my convictions, I totally get what you have had to endure from bigots for so long. And you clearly are way better at standing up to them than me.
So what are you saying, Wayne?
I am saying that I think you should be mayor again and I can resume my earlier job as a history teacher. So I will resign tomorrow.
Well, I can't just take back the position. The town's bylaws require all mayors to be elected.
Then obviously you should run again. And I will go see Mr. Hernandez about him rehiring me for next school year.
Very well. I will run for mayor again in a special election.
Thank you!
I'm glad you persuaded me to move in with you. I already like this place a lot more than Arlington.
Yeah, we don't have crazy traffic issues.
So, are you going to stay at that pharmacy?
For now, yeah. I was thinking of selling it, but the only person I can trust with it is Jessica, who used to work with me there. And she doesn't want it.
Hello?
Jessica, this is Martin. I'm afraid I have some bad news.
What is it?
The city of Miami is becoming flooded due to rising sea levels. The medical clinic I've been working at is now useless due to water damage, so we must abandon it.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Anyway, I was looking at available positions for doctors and found a listing for your hospital. If it is hiring, I am willing to move to your town.
Maybe you should speak to Dr. Drake about what his hospital needs. He is the head physician there. I will give you his number.
Yes, we can hire another doctor. Do you have any specialties? We just recruited a heart specialist.
As a medical student, I focused on dermatology, but after graduating I switched to being a general practitioner to gain a position at the clinic I am now having to abandon.
Great! We actually need a dermatologist to serve on our staff. Come to our town and you may be interviewed by our hospital's owners.
My family and I will be arriving next week, then.
Meanwhile, Wayne Bentley has resigned as mayor of the town and has also posted on Facebook screenshots of the conversation he had with Cindy Everson, a member of the school board. As a result, there has been a huge uproar about it.
Mrs. Everson, what you have done is completely unacceptable. You serving on a public school board while also serving on the board of directors of a private school franchise is itself a conflict of interest. But then for you to try to arrange for a public high school to be sold to your own company to make it any richer? That's a total violation of the public trust. It was wrong for you to attempt that with Mayor Anderson, and it was also wrong to bring that up again with Mayor Bentley. This is a serious scandal.
A scandal? How is attempting to include a Christian background in education scandalous?
It should be a matter of choice, not force. Parents who want their kids to be exposed to Christian values can send them to a church every Sunday. There is no greater violation of religious freedom than to make religion, any religion, the foundation of education that is a requirement for all children. What if this was an Islamic state like Iran? Would it be acceptable for Muslims to push their values on children of Christian or Jewish families? I don't think our founding fathers ever imagined an entire political party in the United States advocating theocracy instead of democracy. So as of today, I have left the Republican Party. Or rather, I have left a party that is not like the one my family was proud to belong to.
As president of this school board, I make a motion to remove Mrs. Everson from this body, and also that the superintendent she favored, Leah Lord, also be fired and replaced. Clearly, we need to clean things up.
I second the motion.
All in favor of the motion, raise your right hand.
And so the motion was passed and both Cindy Everson and Lee Lord were humiliated in public. And on the following Monday.
So you are replacing me as this school's principal?
Yes, that was the deal I made with the school board in exchange for my returning the school to the control of the school board. And you, in turn, will be promoted to school superintendent, replacing Lee Lord. Read the contract.
This is acceptable. I will sign this and then report to the school board next month to receive my official assignments. But who will be mayor of this town?
Mrs. Smith has already said she will be running for mayor again, so that is her problem. I'm just glad I don't have to deal anymore with that political bullshit. Working in education is a much better job for me.
Then starting tomorrow, I will leave this school in your capable hands.
Rouge Scumbaugh has another guest on his show. Trigger warning, bigoted slurs will be used in this episode. Good evening and welcome to the Rouge Scumbaugh Show. At this time I am happy to introduce my newest guest, a conservative columnist and lobbyist named Annie Revolter. Thanks for coming here.
Thank you for having me.
I understand you are strongly opposed to transsexual people gaining equal rights to normal people. Why is that?
Because they are clearly delusional. How can you look at the penis of a so-called transgender woman and not see that he is really a man? And the very idea of a cross-dressing man being allowed into women's private spaces is a slap in the face to every woman out there who does not want to be sexually harassed. Just to be on the safe side, every tranny out there should be locked up permanently if he or she can't accept themselves as the way God made them. And on a more personal note, my enemies have themselves accused me of being transsexual because of my deep voice and larger than usual Adam's apple.
So let me get this straight. Pun intended. Leftists want trannies to be treated as equals and they also accuse you of being a tranny too? How does that make any sense?
Obviously it doesn't. You can't just claim to be whatever gender you want. If that is accepted, what would stop a black person from claiming to be white, or a human from claiming to be a duck or a pig? We have to have clear definitions for what is a man and what is a woman. That's obvious logic. The feminist movement leaders have gone completely insane accepting trannies among themselves. That's why I have rejected feminism now.
I am so sorry. What the hell? That tiny revolter has no idea how much I used to suffer when I tried for years to live as a girl in my teens before realizing it was impossible. Every time I went into a girl's restroom, I felt like an alien. Every time I would try to date a guy, it felt wrong because of how he made me feel. Down to my very soul, I felt like a boy. Do you know how embarrassed I always was to be in girls' locker rooms? I would look at my naked self and feel sick. I was trapped in the wrong sort of body, period. I didn't choose to be what I am. If I couldn't transition, I might as well be dead.
But you are alive and you are my husband, and that makes me happy. You are as much of a man as anyone born with a penis can be. Your soul is indeed that of a man. I feel that from you constantly. If it was merely about you pretending to be a man, I'd know it. If I or any revolter lost our uteruses, vaginas and breasts, wouldn't we still be women? Our bodies alone have never determined our gender.
Sandy Smith has launched her new campaign to become mayor of the town again. And it is not long before opposition to her emerges.
Mother, Rush Scumbra just showed a video about you that was uploaded on YouTube. You'd better see it for yourself.
Probably more crap about me being a tax and spend leftist, eh?
Just look up Sandy Smith, killer, in YouTube's search engine.
And soon afterwards, Sandy finds the video.
I, Leah Lord, have decided to run for mayor of this town after hearing that Sandy Smith, who was mayor years ago, is running for the office again. She cannot be trusted to lead my town again, because the last time she was mayor, she killed someone. Her victim was Diana Kelly, who she blamed for breaking up her marriage to her first husband, Rich Smith. For decades afterwards, Sandy and Diana were bitter rivals. Then one night, Sandy Smith learned that Miss Kelly was camping in the woods near her town, so she tracked down her rival and gunned her down. And no one did anything about it. A person who takes the law into her own hands to eliminate the rival is not fit to lead us. Vote for me instead.
How can he just say crap like that? I remember exactly what happened and why. So do I technically. He is correct. I did shoot Diana Kelly. She was blamed for breaking up my first marriage, and she and I were indeed bitter rivals for many years. Sure, and let's leave out all the other relevant details, like she had burned up part of the forest outside the town, she had kidnapped a child and was herself trying to kill you. Also, Lee Lord lost his job as school superintendent after he tried to have you fired as the history teacher of the town's high school. Let's not forget that.
I'm glad to have your support for my campaign, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, we all have a common enemy in Sandy Smith. She and her daughter and their friends turned the town I grew up in upside down, and they must pay for that. If you become mayor instead of her, then we may feel safe returning to that town so we can have our old lives back. Wouldn't you agree, Rebecca?
Yes, of course. It was my idea for Mr. Lord to appear in that attack ad blasting Sandy for killing Diana Kelly. Diana was my best friend, and I won't rest until Sandy pays for her death.
Summer has arrived and Sandy Smith is campaigning to become mayor of the town again.
Penny, are you sure you want to be doing all this with me? After all, you were pregnant, so perhaps you should be taking it easy. Mrs. Smith, I'm fine. My doctor actually said I needed plenty of exercise, plus I do plan to limit my campaigning to only 3 or 4 hours a day when I am not working at the Tuscany Tavern. My morning sickness is no longer an issue, and I am drinking plenty of fluids to stay hydrated. Okay, I just don't want your uncle getting angry at us. Now what? Mother, I'm afraid I have some bad news. What is it? Chantal Jefferson, the mother of Michael and grandmother of Richard Sims, has passed away. Oh, no. And it was Annika, who Mrs. Jefferson sort of adopted as a de facto granddaughter, who found her lying face down in one of our bathrooms. Mrs. Jefferson's body is already being taken to hospital for an autopsy. Annika is really devastated over this. Okay, I will return home soon to help you. Richard, I'm sorry you are having to go through this. Before you were born, I lost my most beloved grandmother, Kelly Sims, the mother of your grandmother Jessica. I remember what happened like it was yesterday. Oh, my God. Let me hug you. Now I feel like a part of myself is gone forever. When I was your age, my mother was my greatest inspiration. Then my father died a year after I married Lucy. And now this. Of course, children are expected to bury their parents eventually, but that doesn't make this easy. Think how horrible it would have been for me, Lucy, and your grandmother if you had died first. I know. Even now I don't really understand what almost caused me to die that terrible night. I look back and what was going through my mind made no sense at all. I never want to inflict the kind of hurt on anyone that I see you going through right now, Mother Jessica. I will live as long as I can for your sake.
Mother Carrie, will I someday lose you too? I can't imagine life without you or Mother Debbie, or my other grandmothers. They are my world.
That's just the circle of life, honey. It turns and we older folks do eventually pass away and new ones come in to take their place. Mr. Mackenzie, I know we were planning to have Annika brought to you to stay for the summer, but that will have to be postponed a couple of weeks. There has just been a death in the family and we need to deal with that first. Can we please reschedule?
Of course. I will inform my wife. Please keep us posted on the situation.
Thank you. It's not fair. Why do the people I love most keep dying? I wish I could answer that, Annika. But Carrie and I are still here for you. We love you too. The autopsy is complete. It appears Mrs. Jefferson died of congestive heart failure. I wish I could have examined her a few months earlier. Maybe I could have diagnosed her condition and treated it to prolong her life.
Part of being a doctor is knowing that sometimes no matter what you do, you may still lose a patient due to a lethal condition. Don't blame yourself for this. We just have to carry on and hope we can save more lives later.
I don't ever want to lose you, Richard. I'm scared about what may happen in the future.
I feel the same, Annika. So I'm not going anywhere. We still have my mother's and my other 3 grandmothers and your great-uncle and great-aunt in Dallas. Later that evening, Richard talks with Diana Hudson, who lives with her parents in Los Angeles.
I'm so sorry about you losing one of your grandmothers, Richard. I wish I was there with you now.
Yeah, me too. I remember how scared I was after we met at that summer camp, and then those bad people kidnapped you. I almost wish they had taken me instead. Since I was Sandy Smith's grandson and those people were out to get her, that would have made more sense. What's so funny?
Remember when I kicked that boy who was holding me? If I hadn't done that, Mrs. Smith might have been shot by that bad woman, and so you would have lost a grandmother that night.
You're right, you did save her life. I guess I really owe you.
Don't worry about it. Just look forward to meeting me again. I will have a big hug for you.
So Chantal Jefferson is the one who died? I am so sorry. I want to attend her funeral. We actually went to high school together. We were in only one class together, but I do remember her. The last time we met was at the funeral of her elder son Richard. Unfortunately, because Richard Jefferson was killed in a gang shootout, there were more than a dozen other gang members there and that frightened me. I lost touch with Chantal shortly after that. Chantal had 2 sons, the other one was Michael, who moved with her to my town shortly after Richard Jefferson was killed. Michael eventually became the genetic father of my son Richard, who was named after Michael's brother. I chose Michael to be the father because I felt Chantal deserved to be a grandmother and I thought that Michael himself was a great guy. Then Michael and his husband Charles were killed by a homophobe. So Chantal lost both her sons and only had her grandson as her legacy. I can only assume she finally died of a broken heart, literally. Anyway, we have made arrangements for Chantal's body to be returned to Dallas to be buried next to her sons and Charles.
Will Annika also be at the funeral? Yes. I will send you details. The funeral will be held at First Unitarian Universalist Church of Dallas next Sunday afternoon. At that time you may pick up Annika and she may spend her summer months with you.
We will be there.
Annika, are you sure you want to do all this? You don't have to go if you don't feel up to it.
No, it's okay. I want to honor Mrs. Jefferson's memory. And I do want to see my great-aunt and great-uncle too. I just ask that Richard come with me again. Just as Mrs. Jefferson was like my grandmother, so Richard is like my brother. I would miss him so much if we were apart.
I understand.
Meanwhile, right-wing extremists are burning up social media in response to the ad attacking Sandy Smith, made by Lee Lord and funded by Ted Wilson and his wife Rebecca.
How can they allow that killer to go unpunished? First Mrs. Smith's daughter-in-law beats up a cop, then Mrs. Smith herself has committed murder.
Why do you think she took control of her town's police department? She and her family can act outside the law, because in that town they are the law.
What else can you expect from atheists? They clearly have no sense of right and wrong.
Lock her up. Lock her up. Lock that bitch up.
The following Sunday, friends and relatives of Chantal Jefferson gather at the UU Church in Dallas.
The funeral service was lovely, as was the worship service before it. Annika, are you and Richard ready to come with us?
Sure, that's why we brought our luggage.
Debbie, you won't believe what is going on outside. Members of Westboro Baptist Church have shown up and are picketing the funeral. And Ted Wilson and your cousin Rebecca are with them. Along with others. What the hell?
Sandy Smith is a killer, and she belongs to a whole family of perverts.
Let's make their lives a living hell. Avenge Diana Callie.
Try to ruin my life, will you, Sandy Smith? You will pay.
You godless backstabbers. I got thrown off a school board because of you. Christians are being persecuted by those damned liberals and atheists.
Go back to your perverted town and stay there, you libtards.
Things were just fine until you turned things upside down. Damn you.
Lock her up. Lock her up. Lock all of them up and melt down the keys.
I don't understand. How can those mean people do this to us?
Mother, I'm afraid this may be my fault. I made an announcement regarding the funeral on my Facebook page. Someone must have seen it and told the Westboro people about it. I just never thought they would go this far as to bash us like this. You remember when Ted Anderson pulled a stunt like this in our town? This is no different. 911. What is your emergency? We have a large group of protesters that are trespassing on the parking lot of First Unitarian Universalist Church of Dallas. And they include members of the notorious Westboro Baptist cult. We are trying to host a funeral, damn it. Oh, that sort of crazy thing? Don't worry, we will send the Dallas police to deal with those lunatics.
And soon the cops arrive and begin using tear gas, rubber bullets, and clubs to drive the protesters out of the parking lot so the funeral attendees can finally leave. Trigger warning, acts of violence depicted.
So much for freedom of speech and the right of assembly, eh?
At last the protests are ended and everyone moves on.
Are we ever going to have a society in which people can just accept each other's differences and live together in peace? I don't know, Debbie. But at least our son and Annika have had a taste of what bigotry looks like, so when they are adults, they won't put up with it at all.
It is the evening following the protests that occurred in Dallas, and Annika and Richard are getting settled in the home of the elderly McKinsey couple.
Thank you for staying here with me. I was so afraid you'd want to stay with your mothers and then I'd be lonely.
Well, after all the bad things you've been through, you should never be alone again. Huh. What now?
Richard, I overheard my Aunt Laura talking to your mother Debbie about what happened in Dallas. Is it true you were all attacked by a bunch of crazy people during a funeral?
We saw them, but no, we weren't attacked. They just made a lot of noise.
I'm glad you are all right. Anyway, we Hudsons are having a huge party at my grandparents' house. My mother is pregnant. In 5 months, I will have a new brother.
Awesome. How do you feel about being a big sister?
I don't know. I've been asking my Aunt Suzanne and Uncle Tommy about what it was like growing up with my father as their big brother. They have been telling me stories. I just hope I can be as loving to my brother as my father always has been to my aunt and uncle. I couldn't ask for a better family to be part of.
Yeah, they are really special. Well, have fun and good night. Don't be the jealous type when the baby comes, okay?
Speaking of the jealous type.
What? Are you saying you don't like Diana because she likes me? That's silly. You are my cousin and we live together. Diana is totally different from you.
If you say so. But if you abandon me for her, I won't be happy about it. And we are only cousins legally. We are not really related. I should be your first girlfriend, Richard.
We are only 5 and 6 years old. I'd rather not think that far ahead. And besides, my grandmother Sandy once told me something about love. If you love someone, let him go. If he returns to you, he is yours, but if he doesn't, he never was.
I wonder why she would say something so weird.
It's so amusing that those two are having their first lovers' quarrel.
I suppose. I'd worry that they would let it pull them apart. Time will tell if they can work things out. Mother, you should never let Penny go campaigning with you again. Now that I am back in town, let me pound the pavements with you instead. Penny should stay home and take care of herself.
Very well. And speaking of Penny, she's the real reason you dropped out of Harvard, wasn't she? She convinced you to flunk some of your courses so you and she could return to Texas, eh?
What? Did Penny tell you that?
No, Jessica did. She has never been one to keep secrets like that.
I suppose you must be disappointed in me then.
Well, I did advise you to wait until after you graduated from college to get married, and a degree from the University of North Texas isn't as prestigious as one from Harvard would be. But the fact is that you are an adult now and you have to take responsibility for both your marriage and your continued education as well as your future career. Even as your mother, I can accept your decisions as long as they are not criminal acts. By the way, Wayne Bentley has told me that he will be looking for a new science teacher after Simon Wilson retires, and he will also be replacing me as history teacher after this summer. If you want a career in this town, having one of those teaching positions seems ideal for you.
Then I will apply for the science teaching job right after I graduate.
Meanwhile, Officer Kelly Grimm has a report to make to Police Chief Theodore Root.
You won't believe what crazy things I have been finding on street corners and other public places today. Look at this.
What? Is this for real? Wanted, Sandy Smith, for the killing of Diana Kelly, a wealthy widow from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who was visiting her town. Mrs. Smith's violent act makes her unfit to be mayor of the town again.
This is outrageous. You remember what actually happened, don't you? Mrs. Smith was fighting for her own life as well as the safety of another.
Of course. Indeed, the gun Diana Kelly was shot with was her own, and she pulled it on Mrs. Smith first. I suppose it would have been better for Mrs. Smith's enemies if she had been killed instead.
What are we going to do? Those posters are everywhere. I counted 40 of them so far today in various places. I know we are supposed to have freedom of speech in our society, but this looks to me like libel.
I recommend you take this one straight to Mrs. Smith. She has a right to know about this insidious smear campaign.
Interesting. This must be Lee Lord's handiwork. He made a video on YouTube a couple of weeks ago making the same accusation. But what if we made this form of negative campaigning into a positive point for me? What do you mean? You were there, Officer Kelly. By bailing out a domestic abuser, burning down part of the forest outside the town and kidnapping a child, Diana Kelly proved herself a serious threat to the town and its people. As mayor, I wasn't just the town's leader that night. I was also its protector. I didn't just leave the dirty work to you and the other cops of the town. I went personally to the scene and directly confronted the criminal and defeated her after she tried to kill me. And I freed the child she was holding captive and brought another criminal to justice.
That's right. You were much braver and stronger than I ever expected. That's why I will be happy to see you as our mayor again.
Then let's leave the wanted posters up. I can apply reverse psychology to assert that my killing Diana Kelly that night is the very reason why I should be mayor again, because I don't back down when this town and its people are threatened. Mother, what are you doing? I've figured out a way to answer Lee Lord's attacks on me regarding Diana Kelly. Instead of ignoring that issue, I'm going to face it head-on. What do you think?
Re-elect Sandy Smith to protect this town from dangerous criminals like Diana Kelly, who committed arson, kidnapping and attempted murder.
Yes. Republicans say they want their leaders to be tough on crime, and there is nothing tougher than killing someone right after she tries to kill you. Now I will print out over 1,000 copies of this poster, and I want you and others to post them at any place you see the first posters attacking me. The whole truth must be told. And there is something else we can do regarding that situation.
Sandy Smith then opens her Plotagon app and starts telling the story of the summer camp 2 years earlier after making more than a dozen calls to various people in the town, Los Angeles and Boston to hear their stories about what happened. She even calls Denise Kelly and Tulsa for her input.
Honestly, I wish my sister had tried to kill me instead. Anyway, I did some digging into my background. My Aunt Diana's grandmother is still alive and in a nursing home. She told me that about 70 years ago, she and your mother were classmates, but they hated each other because my grandmother thought your mother was beneath her. Grandmother came from a rich family and your mother was poor. She then admitted that Diana's seducing your first husband Rich was her idea, because she felt Rich should be with a better woman than you. What? That is so sick. My sister was a bully all her life. She abused me when we were children, and that was why my parents divorced, because my mother favored Diana and my father felt I needed to be protected from them. After I disappeared from her life, Diana must have felt like you were a substitute for me. You were her punching bag, Sandy. And now she is dead, and that was indeed her own damn fault, but I also blame our mother for how we were raised, to despise each other instead of loving each other like normal sisters do. Well, now you are a mother yourself and you can raise your child to be better than you were raised, making up for the mistakes of the past. Exactly. I hope you win this election.
Welcome to our town's hospital, Dr. Leslie. I'm sorry about what happened in Miami and indeed all the coastal cities of Florida.
Indeed, millions of people being displaced is totally disrupting our state's economy. My wife, our sons and I are not the only ones moving here. My mother is too. Fortunately, we already have relatives here, so adjusting to life here won't be much of a problem.
I am so thankful you invited me to live here. By the way, I brought over recording equipment that made up my studio in Miami. I run my own record label. I know, and the Hudson Family Band is signed to it. You can have your studio rebuilt here, and if they want to record their music here, they can do that too. But I'm mainly glad to see you here. You filled the void in my heart after Kelly Sims died, and now you are filling another void in this household after the death of Chantal Jefferson. No problem. Meeting you made my life complete. So where's my great-grandson? He's in Dallas. We left him and his cousin Annika with another elderly couple for the summer months, but I'm sure you will see him soon enough.
Richard, I hope you are not still upset about my attitude last week.
You mean about me and Diana Hudson? Oh, I'd already forgotten it. Why?
Aunt Teresa and I had a long talk about loving others. She told me that as a teenager she was so jealous of a boy dating other girls besides her that the boy rejected her, causing the very thing she was afraid would happen. She had learned to respect others more when she met my Uncle Kirk, and she didn't try to control him so much. So I won't try to control you either. If you do fall in love with Diana Hudson, then I will have to find a love of my own.
Well, you will start school after this summer, so maybe you will find boys you like there. You are a cutie, after all.
And so are you, cousin.
Sean, what are you doing here?
I work here now. It was the same job my mother used to do, so I have replaced her. For several weeks after I returned to Bella and Eric, they forced me to do all the household chores in exchange for an allowance of $50 a week. Then Bella told me she would stop making me do so much housework if I agreed to get a job outside the home. So here I am.
Well, it's good to see you finally contributing to society. Your relatives are good people.
Yeah, and you were good to me too, in the way that I needed. I'm sorry for all the trouble I caused you.
Good, now may I have a number 2 with onion rings and some Coke?
Sure thing.
Huh? Bella, is that why you called me? To meet her?
Yes. My brother called me and then I called you. Just as Sean and I were able to reconcile, so I think you and Rose need to forgive each other too. At least have a meal with her and try to work things out.
Rose, may I sit with you? Sure. Bella told me to come here, but I thought it was just to meet her again. But this is okay too. You and I said some very hurtful things to each other before you stormed out of our home. I should have been a bigger person and listened to you vent instead of demanding you show more respect. I'm sorry. Bella has convinced me we need to repair our relationship before it is too late. Yes. She told me about losing her own mother. Actually, Sean told me about it first. Seeing the pain in his eyes made me realize over time I needed to let go of the past and embrace you again. I realized that my being abused wasn't your fault and I'm sorry. We both messed up. Forgive me. Do you want to move back in with me and Hermine? She would love to see you again. Sorry, wrong choice of words. But she does miss you. With your brother George now in prison, I could use another pair of hands helping around the house. So you may return on one condition. Give up your lifestyle of prostitution. It's just too dangerous and I don't want to risk anything happening to me or Hermine, because you bring someone around that turns out to be a pervert. Will you help me find a job? You know I never finished high school, so my opportunities are limited.
If you are willing to be either a waitress or a cook, I can ask Lucy and Jessica to hire you at the Tuscany Tavern.
You do that for me? For years I've been treated as an outcast. But if you do give me a chance, I'd be happy to work with you.
Sandy Smith and her supporters post her flyers defending her all over the town, often right next to the ones attacking her. Tongues begin wagging about this. Of course I will endorse Sandy Smith to be mayor again. I was so mad about having to go outside the town and see all that destruction Diana Kelly caused. I'm glad Mrs. Smith killed her.
What was her opponent thinking, attacking her over that incident?
Sandy then is interviewed by a radio talk show host. So as far as you're concerned, the controversy over you killing this Diana Kelly is a non-issue.
Right. Her bailing out George Dawson, starting a forest fire outside the town, and finally kidnapping a child was all about luring me into a trap so she could murder me. And I walked right into her trap, because I was determined to see her brought to justice. Even if she had killed me, the police and the other citizens of the town that were there would have hunted her down and taken her to jail. There were over 100 other people at that scene, so she wouldn't have gotten away.
Now let's talk about the other campaign issue you have raised, your plan to create a ruling council for the town.
Right. The town's elected government consists only of the mayor, who is empowered to make all the decisions regarding the town. I believe that was what enabled Ted Anderson to get away with some of his corrupt activities, because there were no checks and balances in the town to limit his power. Before I become mayor again, I will ask the people to amend the town's bylaws to create the new ruling council. It will have 5 members, each representing one section of the town and its people. This ruling council will be required to pass all laws, which the mayor will sign, and they must also approve the town's annual budget.
Interesting. I hope you are successful, then. The next day, at a political rally.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to see you all here. We love you, Sandy Smith. You are awesome.
We can't wait to see you elected again.
Sandy Smith will make this town a great place for me and my 2 boys.
Mrs. Smith will fight for us like no one else ever has.
We counted over 1,000 people attending today. By contrast, the rally that Mr. Lord hosted last week only drew 90 people, including many outside the town. You clearly are projected to win the election next week, Mother Sandy. Father, I'm sorry, but I've decided that not only will I not support your campaign to be mayor of the town, but I want to leave this place and live with my mother. Your obsession with Mrs. Smith has made me the butt of my classmates' jokes for weeks, and I can't take it anymore.
Honey, I just want this town to go back to the way it was a decade ago. Things were so good for us back then.
Things were good for you, but clearly, most of the people think differently. And so do I now.
Your mother and your grandparents own a chicken farm in Illinois. Do you really want to live like that?
If it means getting away from this embarrassing situation, yes. Let me go now.
All right, I will call your mother and ask her about you moving in with her.
I've already spoken to my mother and she has agreed. And after I leave, I never want to hear anything about Sandy Smith again.
The day of the town's special election, Sandy throws a party at her home. Unlike the previous election, in which opponents of it celebrated together, Lee Lord was not invited to this event. To help cover the event for the America for All network, Suzanne Hudson and Laura Park have returned to the town, with their daughter Mary and their niece Diana in tow. The McKinseys have also returned with Annika and Richard Sims.
Laura, your baby Mary is so adorable. She makes me wish I and Carrie also had a daughter. Well, you and Carrie could also have a second child, right? But then again, that might be a boy too. But of course, there is another solution. Wait until Richard gets married and then you will gain a daughter-in-law. That's true.
I guess it is true after all. You 2 really do belong together.
Annika, you will always be one of my beloved cousins, but Diana is the one I think I want to spend the rest of my life with. I feel so lucky to have her.
I agree. My aunts have told me how incredibly lucky I am to have found my true love partner so soon. They said they didn't even meet until they were teens. You promise that after we grow up you will always love me and be with me, no matter what?
I promise. As long as I have you, I will need no one else. I will indeed love you just as my mothers, my grandmothers, and your aunts love each other.
Keeping Annika and Richard with us for over a month convinced Teresa and I that we are too old to be watching over Annika full time, so while we will gladly have her visit us in the future, we don't ever expect to gain custody of her from Debbie and Carrie. Our nephew Charles was right to decree that your daughter be one of Annika's guardians in his will.
I'm sure Debbie will be happy to hear that. She's been wanting a daughter lately, so Annika can indeed be a de facto daughter for her. It's all good between us.
Hello, and welcome to today's special edition of the America for All Network, the news podcast that tells it like it is. This is Suzanne Hudson, reporting in from the hometown of Sandy Smith, who has been running for mayor of it this summer for a special election. And with me is Carrie Sims, currently serving as a police officer in the town. Carrie, how are things going at the polling places in the town?
Well, I cast my vote about an hour ago, and since then I've been operating as an election monitor in addition to my normal duties as a police detective. All seems to be going well here.
And in the evening, the polls close and the election results are announced. Sandy Smith, the Democratic candidate for mayor, is the projected winner with 95% of the vote cast, while Republican Lee Lord got 5% of the vote. Also, 89% of the voters said yes to Mrs. Smith's proposal to amend the town's bylaws to create a new ruling council for the town, while 10% voted no.
Awesome. I feel like throwing a party. No reason why we can't throw one now, right? Attention all restaurant customers, for the rest of the evening, drinks will be on the house. Enjoy.
And with summer ending, Sandy Smith immediately gets back to the business of running the town, with help from her town's new ruling council.
Welcome, everyone, to the first official meeting of the town's new ruling council. I have appointed you 5 to be the founding members of this body, but you will all be subject to election by the people in 2 years, and then every 2 years after that. Let us begin with introductions. Mr. Hernandez.
My name is Carlos Hernandez, and until this year I was the principal of the town's high school, but now I serve as the superintendent for the entire school district, which includes the schools of this town and several others in the area. I live in the southern part of the town and will represent it at these meetings. And beside me is
Wayne Bentley, the current principal of the same high school that Mr. Hernandez worked at. Before that, I was mayor of this town, and I was the high school's history teacher before that. I represent the northern part of the town. And sitting across from me is Simon Wilson, representing the western part of the town. My father founded the town's hospital, and I became a co-owner of it later. I also served as the science teacher of the same high school Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Bentley served at, though I am now retired. And beside me is
Patty Anderson, representing the central portion of this town. I am the ex-wife of Ted Anderson, who was mayor of the town many years ago, and the mother of George Anderson, who was once its police chief. And finally we have Jessica Sims, representing the eastern part of the town. I am a co-owner of the Tuscany Tavern, one of the most important businesses in the town. I am also the mother of Carrie Sims, a police officer in the town. Now let us all work together as a team to decide what is best for this town and its people.
And so the town enters a new era.